We've got James Cantor standing by, the director of the Toronto Sexuality Centre. James, thanks for taking the time to come on CTV today with us.
My pleasure.
So can you explain, and I tried to do it there, it's sort of in layman's terms, what we're talking about here, but can you give us some more? Can you elaborate about Incel?
We have to be careful not to overinterpret really the meaning of this group. Even though we're accustomed to, in the wake of an attack like this, thinking of it as a terrorist attack and therefore looking for some organization that is joined by some common principles, that's not what we're seeing here. Really, this is barely more than a meme. This is a group of people who usually lack sufficient social skills, and they find themselves very, very frustrated. But now that it is so easy for groups like this to gather together in large groups, people, again, who often have very poor social skills, this becomes their only means of social input. And when they're surrounded by other people with similar frustrations, they kind of lose track of what typical discourse is, and they drive themselves into more and more extreme beliefs. But as I say, for a lot of these people, they are unhappy and frustrated. And for a lot of people, the best thing that we can do with them is good old-fashioned social skills building in therapy or in other situations.
You raise a great point as well, and we want to bring up, if we can, that Facebook post. And I want to get your read, James, on what is in that post, what you made of it when you read it.
Well, I can't really say anything specific about one particular person. Of course, he's not a client or patient of mine. I haven't examined him at all. But of course, it would be perfectly legitimate that for the people who are going to be assigned for his case to look for the obvious potential problems. One of those is a more florid mental illness. Did this guy really know the meaning of the words he was using, or is he just catching on to whatever half-remembered ideas he has about some other florid situation? So I don't think we are far too premature to be really making any kind of great interpretations about specific statements.
We're going to show it one more time, too, because there is something as well that you might be familiar with, which is the use of the term Chads and Stacys, which, again, in this incel culture is meant to refer to those who are socially comfortable people who seem to have it all, people who can date and who are comfortable and not socially anxious. They are often called Chads and Stacys. And you raise a great point, though. We're talking about what is effectively a meme here, James.
Correct. So we really can't overstate this and try to overinterpret what's going on. As I say, we have no mental health assessment. We have not seen the completions of any of these investigations yet. So it's certainly legitimate to be asking questions. But I think really what we need to be looking at is the kind of environments that culture now has, where people who have this kind of frustration or this kind of social deficiencies, and in some cases, out-and-out social disabilities. These people need opportunities to be able to learn those skills. Sometimes that is, as I say, psychotherapy, but we haven't made that very available. I think this is a side effect. There are overtones of sex discrimination in these kinds of cases, in that we've recognized appropriately that women, girls earlier in life, really need help sometimes overcoming a natural inhibition in order to be able to express, for example, leadership potential. But we haven't done very much of that on the other side, where sometimes boys need extra help in order to navigate social and relationship skills, even though those don't always feel very natural to them.
James Cantor joining us from our studios in downtown Toronto. He is the director of the Toronto Sexuality Centre. A lot of good stuff there, James. Thank you for taking the time.
Happy to be here.